Roy, let's take you back to the beginning of your wonderful Celtic career. How did it all start?
Well, I signed for Celtic when I was 13, as a schoolboy, out of Ayrshire. The guy called John Murray was the chief scout at that time, and he obviously watched me at school and whatever, and I signed at 13 years of age. And then I used to travel back and forward twice a week up to Celtic Park. John Clark, who's now kit man, John Clark was in charge of that group at that time of S-Forms. And it was great times. I mean, I played with the United Boys Club at that time, because it was local. Obviously, I'm being from Ayrshire. Bobby Lennox and I coming from the same area. So I stayed with the United Boys Club under 14, under 15. But when I got to the 16 years of age, then I was told to come up to Celtic Boys Club.
In such a young age to make your debut though, how did you feel?
But what happened after that, obviously after the under 16 Celtic Boys Club, the decision was most players then either went out and played junior for a year or two, or you get called up to the reserves. I was very fortunate that I left straight from the boys club and went straight into the reserve team. And I quickly got promoted after that into the first team, and by the February I was a regular in the first team. February, March I was regular playing. I played about 17 games that season, I think.
Obviously Jock Stein was there when you were there. What was he like?
Well, I mean, what can you say? Everything's been said about Jock Stein. He was such a strong personality. His knowledge of the football was first class. There was an aura about him. I mean, he had the reputation of being a hard man, which he was. He was a very hard, disciplined man, but he was also a man that you could speak to, and a man that gave you a lot of advice. And you know, the important part for me at that stage was when after my first season that I'd played as a schoolboy, when I went at season 76, 77, which was a great season for the club as well, my first full season, but he actually pulled me aside and said that he felt that physically, I played quite a lot of games at centre-back at that time, but he felt that at that time, physically, I was more suited to playing central midfield, which I did. And he played me the whole season, basically central midfield. And that was a team along with like Danny McGray and Kenny Dalglish. Ronnie Glavin scored loads that year, Joe Craig, and we won the double and get beat by Aberdeen in the final League Cup. Unfortunately, get beat by Aberdeen in the final League Cup to win the treble, you know, so it was a great learning period as well. But I mean, Jock Stein himself was such a great character, and everything about Celtic, he epitomised that, you know.
What was it like winning things then so quickly, so young?
It was enjoyable. I mean, that as a player, as a young player, signing for Celtic was obviously a dream. You know, you then wanted to play in the first team as quick as you could, and you then want to win things. That was the way it went about those days. You know, you knew along the line that financially you'd be looked after if you were successful, and that was a priority, was to get in the team, play for the team you loved, and then win things. So right away I was straight into it and winning trophies at 18 years of age. So it was a nice feeling, yeah. But the demand's always there, and that's the demand for Celtic. You've got to be winning. If you're not winning, if you're not in a winning team, then you're out the door and somebody else takes your place.
77, obviously a good year, but I think the year more talked about is 79, because 10 men won the league. Tell me about that season.
That was a strange old season, because it had been a heavy winter, and obviously the season, I think, lasted well into May, right into the end of May, I think it was. So it dragged on and dragged on, but I mean, we were in a position where, coming towards the end of that season, well, I think we were quite a few points behind, but gaining on Rangers all the time. And once the games got level, obviously into that last game, knowing that Rangers had a couple of games in hand, we had to win to win the championship. So it was all or nothing on the night. A fantastic game. I mean, obviously we go one down, and then the late John Doyle gets sent off, you know, and everything's against us that night. Everything's against us. But we come back in great style, and
you scored.
I scored the equaliser, and then we go on. Then losing another goal, of course, with about 10 minutes to go or something, to go 2-1 down, and we end up coming back and winning 4-2. I mean, it was just an incredible evening. Again, that was a night where you talk about the Celtic support being the 12th man. That was a night where it was. It's happened so many times. I mean, we can go to the cup finals, we'll talk about them later, I'm sure. The cup finals, 85 and 88, and, you know, great days. But the support that night was unbelievable. I mean, my wife was in the stand that night, and she couldn't believe it. She was up in the chairs singing and dancing, and my dad was the same, and it was just such a great night.
Tails up, going for it now, right in the final minute. McLeod shoots and scores a sensational goal.
Just how far out was Murdo's strike that night?
Well, you'll tell it was about 60 yards. I think it probably was about 30 yards. Right? Yeah, I mean, it was one of those ones at the last minute, and I remember thinking to myself, come on, Murdo, just hit it as far and wide as you can, waste a bit of time. Next thing it screams into the roof of the net. But the whole night, the whole build-up, and obviously playing against your greatest rivals in our last game of the season, knowing winning it wins you the championship. You can't. It's comic book stuff, isn't it? It's what things that people dream of. You know, and it was a great night.
Okay. Let's talk about the cup finals then. 1980, in particular that one. That was a strange one because it's remembered more so for the events after the game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see much of that. We were in the dressing room at the time, celebrating, you know, and, and obviously there was the riot outside and the police charging with the horses and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's something you don't want to see, and thankfully it doesn't get repeated very often at all. It's well under control now, those situations. The day itself, we were written off because basically we had quite a few injury problems that day, and it ended up myself and Mike Conroy played centre back, and we were going to get a hammer on that day by all accounts, you know, leading up to the game. But the game petered out a little bit. If I remember right, Mike Conroy was fantastic on the day. Played a terrific game, as was Peter Latchford, who was a goalkeeper, I think, on that day as well. He was terrific, and we managed to hang on, and then we obviously got the goal in injury in extra time through George McCluskey. Yeah. It was a well swipe by Danny, wasn't it? And George ended up toe poking it in. But again, that was another great day because it was a day where we were given no chance, and we were just going to turn up to make up the numbers. But it was another typical Celtic performance, and we fought to the end and got a great victory. But you're right, afterwards, obviously the scenes that were there afterwards took away a bit from the actual winning the trophy. But you look back at it now, it was still a fantastic day.
I've got to ask you about the 1984 Cup final though. Right, there's a debate going on about this one. You got sent off. I think you were the first player to get sent off since 1929 or something like that. Something bizarre. But now Mark McGee says that it really wasn't his fault. It was all your own doing. Yet there's a certain theory that suggests Mark and Gordon combined to get you.
Well, how can we believe them? They played by Aberdeen for some stage, you know. Hold on, saying that, here's me playing by Aberdeen. No, listen, Mark's a good friend of mine. I know you spoke to Mark earlier. And you'll have a piece of Mark, but on the day it was like a last-ditch tackle for me, and I remember at the time thinking, oh well, as Mark went past, my body went across him, and it looked a lot worse than it was. I know at the time, and I know I upended Mark, but it was a sort of a bookable offence. Couldn't believe it when Valentine himself brought the red card out, because at that stage that wasn't in the rules. Last man, you know, that brought out later. So it was a total surprise, disappointment on the day. Mark, who was poleaxing the ground, went on to win Mr. Superfit Award, I think, that day, you know, so I gave him a bit of stick about that. So, but no, we laugh at it now. At the time it was disappointing, because it went a long way to losing the cup that day, obviously. And the boys fought back really well. Was it Paul that scored the equaliser, and then I think Mark who was poleaxed in the early part of the game, scored the winner. But that was a great Aberdeen side at that time. I mean, they had that, Fergie had installed that winning attitude into them at that stage as well. So there was they were a difficult side to beat, and it was between us and them in the early part of the 80s who was going to win things. They won the cup that year. They had a good record in the cup at that stage. It was disappointing. The good thing was we quickly came back the following year.
Yeah. In style.
Yes, in style again, and won the 85.
To yourself.
So I mean that was nice to put that a bit, you know, to bed quickly, in a sense of a year. But it also it's something that will stick with me. It's probably one of the most disappointing times in my Celtic career, obviously getting sent off in the cup final. But yeah, it was at the time you make that tackle for the right reasons. Unfortunately, I got the referee that for me overreacted, and obviously one or two of the players, the Aberdeen players. But I don't hold that against them. That was them at the time. It was inbred into them. They wanted to win the game, and they were winning at all costs. And I've been in similar situations myself, so it's they had that winning attitude that Fergie had installed into them, and they had players there who had that attitude. You know, the William Millers, Art McLeish, and the Gordon Strachan's and Mark McGee's, top players. So that's what made that competition so great, but it also made it lovely to get one over on them as well at times, you know.
How do you get yourselves as players out of the disappointment of something like that?
How do you get yourself out of it? I think that's got to come within yourself. It's got to come within your personality and your character to say, well, football, and especially football with Celtic, it's a roller coaster, because you've got all the highs and you've got all the lows that come with losing and all the highs that come with winning. What you're hoping to have is more highs than lows. I was very fortunate in my career that I did have that. Winning 6 championships and 5 Scottish Cups and a League Cup over a period of 13, 14, 15 seasons. I think there were only 1 or 2 seasons went by that didn't win something. So what you do is you've got to quickly put it to the back of your mind, the disappointment, learn from it, and push on the following season, and hopefully erase that memory quickly, that disappointment quickly, and which I did. So that's down to the character of each individual. But it was something that, from a Celtic point of view, if you didn't have that characteristic, you wouldn't succeed at Celtic. And that's still the same to the day. Don't think that hasn't changed as far as the demand is on each player at that club to perform to a certain level week in and week out.
Every year you were there, I mean, like you mentioned it yourself, something fantastic happened, didn't it? In '85, obviously, I mean, the Centenary Cup final, it was written in the cards that Celtic would perform so well.
True.
And, I mean, then '86.
Yeah, I know. Well, again, that was that.
Talk us through it, Roy.
We're talking about this. Hearts were running away winners. We're going to be runaway winners of the league, and I remember again at that time, I think we went 8 games on the trot at the end of the season. It was 2 points for a win then. It was 16 points I think we picked up at the end of that '86 season, and it wasn't until maybe the last couple of games of that season that people realised, wait a minute, Celtic are still in this race, because I think there was a few games that we had to catch up in, and it took the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season for it all to level out, and then we go into the last game knowing that we're 2 points behind, 3 goals worse off, that we've got to win by 4 and they've got to get beat. So, but the demand again was on the club. All we could do was look after ourselves and let the opposition or let Hearts look after their bit. We looked after ours in great style. Again, it was what a stylish performance that day, 5-0. I think I remember that day, and it's the fact that the place was so quiet at 4-0 at half time. We knew that Hearts were drawn nothing each. The pressure was right on them getting that second half, and all we could do was maintain what we did. The fans were dead silent a second. I think they're all listening to their radios, listening to Dens Park, see what was happening. 10, 12 minutes to go, I think it was, the roar goes up.
Well, Stuart, you need 2 bites. Now that must be a goal for Dundee. Sheer bedlam around the stadium.
We know that time Dundee went ahead. The best row of the lot was quickly that 2 or 3 minutes after that when we knew it was 2-0.
Yeah.
And that was it, game over. And what a great feeling that day. And I was delighted for Davy Hay. Yeah. Davy Hay that day, who had done a great job at the club, and to win the championship, because again, he was another one who had installed that winning. He had it himself as a player. What a terrific and fantastic player he was for the club. And I worked with Davy later on at St Mirren as well as a coach.
Of course.
So great respect for him. And I thought that day was great for him, and obviously everything that he had put into the club at that stage, because winning the championship against all the odds, coming back, he drove us right to the very end as well.
Did you honestly believe, though, before the game? I mean, did you as a group of Celtic players think, right, we're going to win this championship today? Oh,
definitely, yeah. No, I mean, it's not in your hands, but all you can do as a group is put pressure on the opposition. But we knew that Hearts going to Dundee was never going to be an easy game. The last thing that Dundee players, and obviously it was Albert Craig that scored the goals. Albert Kidd that scored the goals. I mean, they wouldn't want Dundee to be remembered as a place that Hearts won the championship. So all these things come into it. We know ourselves, we're going to places to win championships. The last thing you want to do is, St Mirren on the day, St Mirren had no answer to us because we just overran them. It's probably one of our best performances of the season in that 5-0 victory. And there's some fantastic goals scored. I think Morris and Barry McClare scored a goal that day. There was great goals that day. Just a great team performance. But yet you get into that game, of course, you get into that game believing you can win the championship, and all we could do is put enough pressure on Hearts to do that, and it ended up that way because it was installed in us as players. That you fight to the very end, or you play to the very end, and you believe in yourself right to that last whistle.
You were captain, Ryan, for the Centenary season. What did that mean to you?
It's what I said earlier about probably the best season being the Centenary season for me because I was the captain. That's not taking away any of the other cup finals or championship ones, because they're all special and you remember them all. But the Centenary year being the year that meant so much to the club, and being captain of the club, that's what I said before, you want to play with the club, you want to be successful with the club. If you can become captain of the club and lead them to success, then what more can you ask for? So I've been very fortunate that I've been able to do all of that, and I never take it for granted. I look back on it and look back on it with pride, you know. So I'm fortunate if I can look back at my career with that, because it is a roller coaster, as I said before. But I look back at it and say, well, good job done, sort of thing.
Yeah. Was the team spirit just as fantastic as you all talk about that
I've been
season?
very lucky with the teams that I've had through my career at Celtic, from coming in at 75, 76 to finishing up in 89, 90, that there was always, the dressing room was always healthy, good team spirit within the group. There was a good atmosphere in the group. You know, it wasn't a case of we were all buddies, but we all respected each other for the job each other done. And that, I think that's, any successful team has got that within the group, within the dressing room, you know, and I've been fortunate. I'd like to think that I'd helped that dressing room along, because being the captain and being probably, you know, pretty strong character myself in that respect, that I enjoyed that. I enjoyed being, I enjoy the responsibility of being the leadership. I enjoy that on the pitch, I enjoy it off the pitch. But we had in that dressing room as well, right through that 80s, other people who also took responsibility. So there was a group of us there, you know, who took responsibility week in and week out, day in and day out.
It's just like kind of, I mean, Peter Grant described it like a holiday movie type thing, you know, like centenary year, Billy McNeil comes back to the club, Caesar returns, and it just, nothing seemed to be able to go wrong. It was just written for you. Yeah,
it was written, but it was a lot. I mean, that probably takes away from the fact that the players, and it was a very, very good squad of players. Yeah. And but we were again helped by the momentum that was created by the support, because they were right behind us every game. You know, because they wanted the club to do so well, and again that epitomised the Celtic support, and that extra, that's that 12th man help. You know, they're there with you every week, every game, pushing you on, driving you forward. Now, some players can't handle that. Some players find that difficult, but we had a group there that all responded to it, and it's like Celtic. If you can't handle that expectation, then you'll soon get found out and move on. I was fortunate with that group right through that time, that we all wanted to be successful, and we all could handle the pressure that came with it, and everyone responded to that. But it was a lot of hard work driven on by, you know, a manager and coaching team that also had that same ambition.
What was it like when the fans were singing "Feed the Bear"?
Again, that started, I probably started late 70s. I think it's because in my game I was fairly robust in the style I played, and I used to break forward from the back, no matter where I played, and there was charges during the course of the game, and you know, I suppose that was the type of player I was. Strong physically, in the sense that a big part of my game was getting about the pitch, and so the fans responded to that. Yeah, it was great. It was done with affection, and I always felt that way, and it was something that I responded to. It was great.
Who do you think you learnt most from in the 80s? I mean, in terms of fellow players, was Danny McGrain a big influence? Or?
Well, I mean, I travelled with Bobby Lennox. I mean, Bobby and I travelled for years together, because we both came from the same area. I mean, Bobby's was a lot older than me, and looks a lot older than me as well. You can tell him that next day. Only kidding, Lemon, only kidding. But he was a big influence in the sense of, he knew exactly what it was all about. He was, you know, a Lisbon Lion who had done it all, you know. And for me, as a young boy coming into the team at 16, 17, 18 years of age, you know, Bobby also was a tremendously fit character. You know, put a lot of emphasis on keeping yourself fit, strong, because Celtic's nature was, it demanded a high intensity, high pressure, high tempo game. That was the way we played. It was always in the front foot, offensive, so you had to be fit to play in the team for a start. But just, you know, just got a good upbringing into what was required to be successful at Celtic. And he's such a great character, such a great personality. You know, with some great times, great laughs together, and that, you know, it was a joy to come to the club and come to training every day, because I was in that happy environment, and that environment that was also demanding as far as being successful. But you mentioned players that Danny McGrain and Kenny Dalglish are two of the best players that for me I've ever played with. Danny was just so consistent, week in, week out, week in, week out. Great ambassador for the club, great player. Kenny could turn a game out of nothing, win a game out of nothing. That's what Dalglish was, you know. So I played with him for a couple of seasons, obviously played with him in Scotland after that, but before he went to Liverpool. So those players, but there's been so many great players, but it's difficult to say which one, but you know, Bobby and I had such a great relationship at that stage, and he was one that I would definitely look back and say helped me a lot in my younger career coming through. To pinpoint for whatever reason, just that he had so many good habits and so had done it all before that I respected that and really, you know, in a sense, I picked a lot of that off of him.
Massive success, Roy, on the domestic side. What about in terms of European football?
Yeah, European football, I suppose, with the teams that we had, I would say we probably should have done a little bit better. A couple of nearlies, you know, the Real Madrid's quarter-final was a nearly, you know, because we'd played so well at Parkhead, 2 up, went over there, should have been ahead in the game before half-time. They then got a dubious free kick decision that they scored from eventually from a corner. If you remember, I think they gave it against Peter Latchford for over carrying a ball or something. Yeah. It was a strange old one, and the game just went pear-shaped in the second half, as it would in the Bernabeu. They get the goal for half-time and came out. I don't think we crossed the halfway line in the second half. They get such a lift. So that was a nearly. It could have been such a great occasion going to the semi-final. The other one obviously was the Rapid Vienna game, where it was so close again, and a decision that was taken out of our hands. Performance-wise, we should have been in the next round. Performance-wise, that team, I think, could have went all the way to the final. Rapid Vienna did. Everton beat them eventually in the final. You know, so we were as good as they were and should have been in that next round. Those were the disappointing spells. Other games like the Sporting Lisbon 5-0 and coming back for 2-0 down, and there's been some great highlights there. But the consistency in Europe wasn't as great as the consistency in the domestic scene. At that stage.
Can you put that down to anything?
No, I think it's just down to the competition's high. You need a break or two in that competition. I think when Aberdeen won the Cup Winners' Cup, we had a very, very good side. They got the breaks along the way as well. You know, when it came to the crunch there was a few occasions where we just didn't get the rub of the green, which I think you do need in a European competition as well. We're always there. We're always in the competition, always trying our best. There were great nights. There were some fantastic nights. You know, I even remember the Juventus game when they came and beat them 1-0. Went over there and lost 2-0. Disappointing, but again, it was so near but so far. Yeah. But, you know, there were some fantastic performances in there. But maybe the consistency, well, it wasn't, the consistency wasn't there, but we were so close on a couple of occasions, and just down to referee decisions or a rub of the green, we might have just been in that latter stage.
What about the Atletico Madrid, Roy? How strange was that to be involved in a match where it's behind closed door? I mean, everybody was talking about Rangers and Inter, but you guys all experienced it. Again,
it was the lack of atmosphere doesn't help at all. You know, the beauty of the European nights at Celtic Park was the atmosphere was so good, and that drove you on as well. So that game itself was just, it was a flat game.
Yeah, and you scored. It must have been really strange.
Yeah, I know there was nothing. That's right. It was just a dead atmosphere. It's a game that you look back and you think, well, you wouldn't want to go through that too often, you know, because the atmosphere itself is what makes the game as much as anything else, and that, you know, demand from the support and the support getting behind you is what makes a special night.
What about a few of the guys have been talking about in the European nights? You're talking about so near, so far, Partizan, Belgrade's, obviously.
Yeah, another night. I know, another night that we do everything to try and win the game. You're pushing for a typical Celtic night, you know, and lose a goal and late on, and that was a dejected feeling on that night, because we'd done so much to try and win the game. You know, I think it was another up and at them Celtic performance, but in a lot of occasions, you know, we just let ourselves down from a defensive point of view. You know, it was just very much gung-ho that night. You know, and looking back, possibly a couple of times in the game when we should have been a little bit more cautious. But we just let's have to score another one, let's go and score another one. But at the same time, leaving myself a bit vulnerable defensively as well. There's quite a few occasions you can look back and think, well, we were so close, we were so close, we were so close.
You were at Celtic for such a long time, Roy. Did you ever consider during that period to move on, or were you just so happy with...
Right through that early part, that 15 years, I mean, I felt when I did decide to move on, it was a time to move on. For me, I felt as if I'd done everything I could do at the club, and it was important for me and my family to have a change. And I think it can get to a situation where I didn't want to lose the respect that I had for the support and the support had for me. And it can happen because you can get to a situation where you can be taken for granted a little bit, and familiarity breeds contempt a little bit. And all those things together, I just felt that was the right time for me to move on. And I would still think to this day it was the right time for me to move on, because I had done all my best years had been with the club. So from that point of view, that was the time that I decided, for my family's sake and my sake, to try something different.
Hard though, I suppose, to...
Very hard, of course. Very difficult to make a break. I mean, after 15 years and some best part of 700 games, then